Baptism is one of the two sacraments in the United Church of Christ, alongside communion. And baptism is done in many different ways, and different faith traditions do it differently. The faith tradition that I grew up in and was baptized in believed in believer's baptism. So once a person makes the decision to be baptized, it is to be done, and it is to be done immediately. Doesn't matter if it's in a service. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter if it's in a hotel. It doesn't matter. Their belief and their tradition is it must be done immediately. And some practice full immersion. Some practice sprinkling. Some practice pouring. Some people are baptized as infants. Some are baptized in their teen years. Some are baptized even as adults. Some are baptized very near the end of their lives. Baptism means so many different things to each and every person. But there's something special about baptism. There is something remarkable, I think, at least for me, about baptism, in that I can remember vividly to this day my own baptism. At 10 years old, Petersville United Church of Christ in Florence, Alabama. And it was the custom of that community of faith that you come forward if you're in a service and you make a public profession of faith, and then you are baptized. Full immersion. I can to this day remember the feel of that water flowing over me as I went down into those waters. And I can remember so vividly coming up out of that water and seeing my dad at the top of the steps. And when I think about that moment, when I think about God descending on Jesus like a dove and saying, "You are my son, and I am so pleased," I get chills thinking about that moment so many years ago. I also remember every baptism that I have had the honor and the privilege of being a part of. Through my time as a youth and family minister up until today, I've kept a list, and each one of these names on this list has special meaning and holds a special place in my heart. But as I was looking over the list this week, I have had the honor and the privilege of baptizing 148 people. And each and every one of them is special. And each and every one of them is a beloved child of God and a person with whom God is so pleased and so proud. This story of the baptism of Jesus is a great day of remembrance. Maybe you can't remember your own baptism because you were baptized as an infant. Maybe you remember instead your confirmation. I dare say, and if you're here, you can raise your hands if you feel comfortable. I think we have some folks here that were baptized and confirmed in Grace Church, right? Raise your hands if you were. See, we have several. And they're all over here on this side. There is something about this side of the sanctuary. I just want to point that out. But your baptism, whether you were an infant or whether you were baptized later in life, and whether you went through confirmation, all of those moments in your life are special, and they hold special meaning. This story of Jesus' baptism has so many things, as I said to the children, that we could talk about. And yes, it is a beautiful thing to think about the heavens opening up and a dove descending on Jesus and this voice from heaven saying, "You are my son in whom I am well pleased." That's a powerful story. But if we only focus on that, we miss a few details that I think may be important to us today in our modern time. Just by virtue of the fact that Jesus was baptized by John, made a political and a spiritual statement. Because you see, if you know anything about John the Baptist was out in the wilderness because they couldn't stand his type of preaching in town. The government officials and even the religious leaders had issue with John because John had no problem calling what was wrong, wrong. Whether that meant you were a religious leader or not. John is the one that's called people, you brood of vipers. And he had no problem taking to task anyone who was doing something contrary to what God ordained. So John is out in the wilderness, and he's so powerful that people are questioning whether or not he is the Messiah. And he's very quick to say, look, I'm not the Messiah. I baptize you with water, but there's somebody coming after me that's far greater, so much greater that should not be able to even tie his sandals. He will baptize you with the Spirit. And then Jesus, making a bold statement, meets John at the Jordan and is baptized by this radical person that had to be ministering in the desert. And in some accounts, after this, Jesus makes another powerful statement by going out into the wilderness, charting out his own path, which is in and of itself is a statement against the status quo. But I want you to think about for just a moment what it would have been like to be John the Baptist. What would it have been like to be the one to baptize the Messiah? If you go way back in the story, John the Baptist is the one who leaped in his mother's womb when Mary showed up at Elizabeth's door. So that connection has been there for a very long time. And you've been out preaching and teaching and raising all kinds of good trouble, preparing the way for the Messiah. And you find yourself in the waters of the Jordan, and here comes Jesus to be baptized. Can you imagine what that would have felt like to John the Baptist? Can you imagine what it meant to Jesus to stand there in the water with John the Baptist to be baptized and to start his earthly ministry? Just imagine all the feelings that day. Friends, those are some of the same feelings that I feel like your family and your friends and your community of faith and my community of faith felt when we ourselves were baptized. Whether that was by immersion, sprinkling, pouring, as an infant, as an older person, doesn't matter. Because when we are baptized into possibility. And my theology about baptism has changed many, many, many times over the years. And I thank God for that. I think that the more that I have deconstructed and reconstructed my theology on a lot of things, baptism is one of those things. Because I grew up where fear was a great motivator for anyone in the church. And if you did something wrong, you had to repent of that. And if you didn't repent of that and something happened to you, then hell was your eternal destination. And that was a motivator for so many people in the faith tradition that I grew up in and even ministered in for many, many years. But I baptized a young lady named Rochelle when I was a pastor at a little country church in a little bitty town in Kentucky called Sedalia, Kentucky, right outside of Mayfield. She was 15 years old, had been in the youth group, born and raised in that congregation. I baptized her on a Sunday night, and afterwards the youth group went out on our normal Sunday night outing to where else? Dairy Queen. And we are sitting at Dairy Queen, and we're having our ice cream and talking and laughing. And this was before cell phones, and the manager comes to me and says, "Is your name Chance?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You have a phone call." I said, "Okay." So I went and got the phone. It was Rochelle's father, who said that he had received a call from one of the elders in the church that when, unbeknownst to me, that when I immersed Rochelle, her hand came up out of the water, and therefore she wasn't fully baptized. And therefore she wasn't fully saved. We had to come back together as a youth group and a congregation for me to baptize Rochelle officially, because her arm came up out of the water. And I said to her, "Rochelle, I'm going to hold you under until I see bubbles. I just want to know that I am doing this right." And we got it done right. That, I don't think, is what baptism is all about. I think there's more to baptism than that. But when we are baptized, we're baptized into so many possibilities. We have a possibility of love. Not only our own love for others, but a whole community's love for us. When an infant is baptized, it is a community saying, "We are going to support you. We are going to pray for you. We are going to encourage you along this journey." We're baptized into hope of love and community. We're baptized into the possibility of joy and hope. And sadly, yes, even the possibility of hurt. Because the spiritual journey that we're all on is not always an easy one. It is not always a comfortable one. And if you've ever been, quote unquote, church hurt, you know that that hurt goes very deep. But with all of that possibility that we are baptized in, I shed my own tears at every baptism that I've ever been a part of or have ever been able to witness. Not because I think that this person has died to the old and a new person has been raised again. Not because I think that this person now suddenly has salvation because of a commitment that they made. I shed tears because I think about the immense love that flows from that person to everyone around them, and from everyone around them to that person. That is what baptism means to me. Possibility. So many possibilities. Each time I put my hand or my finger in a baptismal font, I'm reminded of that possibility. I'm reminded of the importance of community and love. Today we're going to have a remembrance of baptism here in our service. In a few minutes, Nathan will come to play, and as he's playing, you will be invited to come by the baptismal font. And as I touch your head with this water, as a remembrance of your baptism, I want you to think about the love that goes from me to you, from you to this community, and from this community back to you. Think about the possibilities. And yes, you may even want to pause and think for a moment about the people who may have been in the room when you yourself were baptized. If you were baptized as an infant, you may think of the people that might have been there. You might also want to whisper a prayer of thanksgiving for those that have helped you along your spiritual journey up until this point. But the main thing that I want you to do is to remember you are a beloved child of God. And there's not a thing in the world that you can do to change that. I invite you, as Nathan starts to play, to come forward whenever you're ready. I also have a station over here by the heater that if you would like to go over there and have a private moment of remembrance of baptism, you're free to dip your hand in the water or even just your finger. Offer some silent prayers if you would like. You're free to do that. The baptismal font is here by the fountain, by the pulpit, so you'll just come here. I would move it, but I'm telling you it weighs about 20,000 pounds. It weighs so much it's carpeted around, so it's not moving. But if you come, I will be able to assist you here. But let's remember our own baptisms today, even as we remember the baptism of Christ and all the possibilities that come with that.